Just,
Anywhere you like on the side if you like.
yep, that's fine.
Good evening, everyone. As always, good to be back. The reason why I chose to wear my clerical suit this evening, it was on a rather warm, muggy evening, was just to say to you that against all common perceptions about what Pakistan is and assumptions that it's a country of persecution of Christians, this is my regular wear in Pakistan. For a particular point of view, just to simply indicate that I am a Catholic priest in the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. It engenders no hostility in any way at all. If I could just pass an anecdote about Cardinal Pell. My parents knew him very well in Ballarat. And one occasion they were back in the Assumption Church in Cheltenham for a function that the Cardinal, when he was the Bishop in residence here, was attending. And my mother is a rather direct person, or was a rather direct person. And at the end of the Mass, when the Bishop Pell was standing in the foyer of the church, I came up and said to him, "Rhondda, Bishop, tell me, do you enjoy being a bishop?" To which the Bishop Pell, grasping his crozier even more firmly, said, "Well, God forgive me, Jean, but I do." A man of endeavour, an extraordinary man in the life of the church in Australia, an extraordinary influence on a universal basis throughout the whole world. The last time that I was here was in the midst of the floods that were happening in Pakistan, if you recall, August. And I want to acknowledge with thanks the assistance that you gave then for flood relief, emergency flood relief, through St. Elizabeth Hospital in Hyderabad. An interesting encounter took place between the military, the army, Pakistan Army, and the medical teams from St. Elizabeth Hospital. Water everywhere, chaos, structures collapsed, thousands upon thousands of people living up on the more elevated roads so that they could get away from the floodwater. The military and our military vehicles and our vehicle were trying to pass one another on this very narrow roadway, elevated roadway. And it was an opportunity for them to talk amongst themselves. And the military said, "What are you doing?" "Medical." And they said, "Don't get into food. We've got plenty of food to distribute. We've got the equipment to distribute food. The thing that the government hasn't organised is healthcare, and we depend upon you in this area to provide the healthcare." I thought that was an extraordinary recognition of what the Catholic Church and through St. Elizabeth Hospital was doing in this particular area of southern Pakistan. Pakistan at this particular time is going through a monumental crisis. It's got $3.2 billion of reserves left, which is enough to keep the country going for 13 days. It's hovering on the brink of defaulting. Will it? It depends very much upon the IMF representatives who are there. It's in political turmoil, and there doesn't seem to be a will or a reason or an inclination for the people who could to come together to give a direction to the country. It's in this particularly turmoiled situation that this eruption of terrorism has happened very much in the north of the country, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, around Peshawar and other areas, Mianwali, where the Taliban-e-Tehreek Pakistan, a fundamentalist violent group, have been bombing and attacking. People have asked me, has this engendered fear amongst Christians? Actually, it's not based against Christians, but it's an attack by this extreme politico-fundamentalist religious group on the political structure, the political reality of Pakistan. It's a destabilizing process that's going on and shouldn't be interpreted as an attack on Christians. I think it's important to realize that just because these events happen, it's not necessarily a flow over into Christian domain and on the Christian believers. There is an re-emerged fundamentalist stream, however, politically in the country. 10 days ago, the Punjab Assembly, National Assembly, was dissolved in preparation for elections, basically because of dissension within the House, and there was the inability for the parliamentary structure to be maintained. The last piece of legislation that was rushed through in one morning was proposed by one of the extreme religious party, members of a extreme religious party, the Jamaat-e-Islami, and it extended the content of the blasphemy laws, that anyone who would insult the family, the wives, the children of Muhammad, or the first 10 caliphs, was guilty of blasphemy. I noticed in some of the less informed international journals that this was an extension of the threat through the blasphemy laws on Christians. It's actually not, because the Jamaat-e-Islami, it belongs to the majority Sunni sect of Islam, and it was in fact an attack or a threat upon the 27% of Pakistanis who belong to the Shia community. So again, what I'm simply saying, it's important to sift, to balance the information that comes through out of Pakistan in relationship to the situation of the Catholic Church and Christians in Pakistan. The major threat to Christians in Pakistan is the cultural, social, and economic threat of discrimination on the basis of religion. I referred to this the last time I was here with you. It's definitely not persecution, and has been one of the things that I am very personally satisfied with, that I could ensure that the Holy Father would never use the P word, the persecution word, in public addresses in relationship to Pakistan. There had been some years earlier a bombing attack on a Christian church in Lahore, and I knew that the Holy Father was going to use the P word on his Angelus address that day. It was a Sunday. Within the space of 2 hours, I was able to get a message through into the papal household to explain not to use it. The government would accept the social reality, the actual reality that Christians are intensely discriminated against on the basis of their religion. And that is negotiable. That's having recognized and accepted that, we can work together to ameliorate it on through political and legal levels. But to use the persecution word would immediately cut the communication. I am always insistent whenever I speak on occasions like this, how important it is in circumstances where Christians are a minority to use the right vocabulary so that the majority-minority language can be broken down. I mean, even that language of majority, minority, which is enshrined in the Constitution of Pakistan, is language of discrimination. A previous governor of the Sindh once said to me when we were having a meeting, he said, at the top of my list is that we will be able to eliminate these two words from the political, constitutional and legal language of Pakistan, majority and minority, which is indicative in itself of the levels of goodwill that are in the country. On September 17, 2018, just 6 weeks before that poor unfortunate woman, Asia Bibi, who, like Cardinal Pell, was grievously and unfairly accused of blasphemy, in the same way His Eminence was grievously and unfairly accused, she received the death penalty. On the 31st of October 2018, the Supreme Court overturned that decision of the lower court and set her completely free. We have the issue that resonates here in Australia with the decision of the Supreme Court. But what had happened on the 17th of September, just 6 weeks earlier, I'd been asked by the Ambassador of Pakistan to Italy to arrange a protocol visit for the Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice Khosar, one of the members of the Supreme Court, and the head of the High Court of Lahore, who were in Rome at the time, to arrange a protocol visit for them to the Vatican. I was able to include a visit for them with Archbishop Gallagher, who was the nuncio here in Australia, but is now the equivalent of the foreign minister of the Vatican. Normally a visit like that would be perhaps 10-15 minutes. They were with him for 45 minutes. And when they came out from the meeting, as I was escorting them down the stairs, I asked the Chief Justice what his immediate impression was. And he said, "Brother, this is the first time that the representative at this particular level of any foreign government has listened to us with understanding and sincere interest about the difficulties that we ourselves have with these blasphemy laws." The blasphemy laws are a threat to Christians, but they're a legal embarrassment to the highest levels of the judiciary in Pakistan. And inflammatory talk concerning these blasphemy laws does not assist those highest levels in the judiciary to deal with them and ameliorate the decisions which are passed. Catholics and Christians in Pakistan do more than just survive. When I arrived there in 1978, it was simply a matter of bearing and hoping for the best. Strategies weren't there in place to enable a trajectory into the future on a higher level. I believe that the works that we together have been involved with, healthcare and education, have made an extraordinary difference in Hyderabad, which is recognized in other dioceses and by the civil and political leaders in Hyderabad itself. What I've always been concerned about in Pakistan as regards Catholic young people is that particular concern which was with the founders of the KSC in the beginning. The waste of the potential of Catholic young people because of the barriers that seemed insurmountable for them to move beyond. We remember the visions of for instance, the Christian Brothers when they began their system of schools throughout Australia and Victoria. 15 years ago, you were the people who put your hand into mine as we began these two centres of special education, or specialised education. I think that's a better way to put it. Not for special children, but for, and young people, but deprived people who had the potential to move beyond if the opportunity was given and with a secure source of funding. And it's from that that our Catholic Centre of Academic Excellence has emerged and the Catholic Youth Development Centre has emerged. The first one, Catholic Centre of Academic Excellence, to enable these young people to move beyond the boundaries of discrimination and to get university entrance on merit. And once that was done, that was the key to the future. I was told I was a fool, it was unachievable. But when one looks at the hundreds of our young people who have moved through that, medicine, masters in mathematics, masters in English, pharmacy, fine arts, archaeology, teachers who are up to grade 15 and 16 in the civil service of Pakistan, where the highest level is 22. 22, you've almost got to be a member of the Trinity to get up there, but we've shown to them that it is achievable, and that to get into the understanding of these young people, I can do this. And once they've been able to say, I can do this, they've broken through the barriers that have been set around them institutionally, culturally, that you can't because you're non-Muslim. It's been the breakthrough point through them and the extraordinary confidence that has emerged in these young people. Linked in with it is a very Ignatian strategy. St. Ignatius of Loyola. When you see the evil, act directly against it, agere contra, act against it. These young people have been told continually, you can't because you're non-Muslim. We turned that on its head, and now their common saying, which is infected, thanks be to God, the whole church in Hyderabad, I can because I'm Catholic. It seems that in all of this, we draw the distinctions of religion very, very extremely, perhaps grossly, but the distinctions are drawn. And why does that have to take place? Because the country is the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, which constitutionally gives every single person the right to practice their religion freely and openly. Let's not talk about the conversion process, even though I do move into that, but I'll leave that to the side. But we're just talking about this actual being a Pakistani of various beliefs in the one homeland, the one nation. And this is why we have to address the discrimination based upon religion. I've sent to many of you, and I hope you've shared them, clips on WhatsApp of activities in these centres. These are confident young people taught by confident and extremely able young teachers, some of whom are themselves graduates from the first group that started 15 years ago. The Bishop of Hyderabad has said this is the best thing that has happened in his diocese. I tried to tell him, well, what about the hospital, Bishop? He said, leave that, let's just talk about this. But the other thing, specialised centre of education, has been the Catholic Youth Development Centre, to enable young Catholic men who have been traditionally condemned to sweep streets, the most degrading work and isolating, marginalising occupation that can be done in Pakistan. To enable them through 3 years of schooling in the morning, to achieve a breakthrough, to become literate, and then to achieve their success in their final high school examinations and move on to wherever. It doesn't embrace every single young person in Hyderabad. But what it does, it gives the standard that for young people who are there and want to break out and move beyond, it is possible. So it's engendering hope, and not just engendering hope, but making hope a reality. And as I've always said to you when I've come to a function or a meeting here, the success of these two centres has been the fruit of your generosity and your collaboration. The major threat to education in Pakistan at the moment is that which was introduced by the ousted Prime Minister Imran Khan. He lost the no confidence motion and most unhappily was deposed as Prime Minister. Immediately before that had happened, he brought in legislation of a single common curriculum for the whole country, from first class in primary school up to final year of high school, and then in the pre-university 2 years of academic studies. The aim was to ensure that there was across the board sameness, or at least an across-the-board standard. That was the assumption. But it was very quickly obvious that what it was a policy to enforce an extreme Islamicization through the education department, which included in the Punjab compulsory reading of the Quran by all students in the classroom, whatever their religion. This Islamicization became the content of the Urdu reading materials for studying English. It was going to take over the whole milieu of education. How do we deal with that? Fortunately, the government of Sindh rejected it outright. And the instability of the political situation at the moment does not indicate to us yet which way it is going to go. There's still a very, very big fundamentalist vote bank in the country. Who's going to get that vote bank? Which way is it going to go? We just don't know at the moment. Primarily because no political party wants to put its head up above the financial parapet when all of this warfare, this financial warfare is going on to try and save the country from financial disaster. Having said all of that concerning Islamicization and religious terrorism and discrimination, by now it's fairly obvious that the saffronization project and agenda of Modi in India is a bigger threat to the Catholic Church and to Christians than what has emerged in Pakistan. The destruction of churches, attacks on religious, killing of Christians, burning of Christian villages has become by fundamentalist Hindu groups has become a commonplace. Unfortunately, Pakistan still remains the bête noire, the place to pillorize when it's a neighbouring country where we have a major, major problem. Surely what's going to happen, and it hasn't been included so far, in the Pew report, an international organisation, according to them, there are 390 million Christians who are being persecuted on account of their faith. China, Nigeria, Pakistan is included, but India is not included. And when we add into that the almost 35 million Christians who are in India, that level and number of persecuted Christians is going to rise very, very significantly. The other significant work that, as you know, I've been engaged with, and I've already made an allusion to it, a reference to it, is healthcare through St. Elizabeth Hospital. The hospital itself, the Mobile Medical Outreach Program, which provides free medical care to more than 50,000 actually totally impoverished people who are enslaved to the big landlords. We provide free primary care to them, and as is needed, free primary, secondary and tertiary education, health care in the hospital. Side by side with that is the free home-based palliative care program that we have, nursing care, the only one in Pakistan, and we from this small hospital are the pioneers in palliative care in Pakistan. What this enables us to be is the public face of the Catholic Church in Hyderabad. A work of compassion that embraces from the beginning, because there's a speciality in the hospital of mother and child care, up to end of life through palliative care. At Christmas time, the staff of the hospital and administration and management have no embarrassment or hesitation in festooning the front of the hospital with coloured lights. The figures of the crib, which it's taken me about 5 years to bring out from Rome, are about that high. And this crib is set up in a public place right at the entrance into the hospital. There's never been any objection to it from Muslim or Hindu, and of course Christians are delighted with it. The only problem that we have with it is regularly during the Christmas period, the statue of the baby Jesus disappears because the women who are about to give birth feel that the Muslim women who are about to give birth feel much more safer and confident if they've got the statue of the child Jesus squirreled away somewhere in their room. So the only way that the staff know how to get it, they just check up on the woman who's most recently had a baby, and the nurses will go over there and bring the child Jesus back to the crib. Whatever it is, I think it says something about the interrelationship, the interpenetration of believers. Once people move away from that strident fundamentalism, great things are possible. I think in that there's a message for Australia as regards interfaith harmony, that we should not allow politicians to set the agenda for interfaith harmony by political sloganeering. I find that reading this through the press, as I do when I'm overseas, I find it very, very unhelpful in nurturing and developing a agenda, a reality of interfaith harmony, which should not be the agenda of the politicians, but it's the reality and the agenda of the believers, of we believers. Many people do other things in Pakistan, but these are the things that we do together. And I think we do them well together. Just to step back a little bit from that, something about myself. On the 26th, from the 26th of December through until now, it's been a season of many things and many events. December 26th, I went to Canterbury, as usual, as I've been doing since 2014, as a representative from Rome, for the celebration of the Feast of St. Thomas Becket, with Archbishop Justin Welby and the Anglican Communion, and with the canons in Canterbury Cathedral. It's become a very, very significant ecumenical celebration. And then back to Rome, the funeral of Pope Benedict. The weather was not cold, it wasn't raining, but it was the cloud, the dark cloud was low over the city. And it almost seemed as if it set the atmosphere for what was happening at the funeral of Benedict. One of the things that's not noted is back on the last day of February, when the Pope had resigned and left from Rome, 5 o'clock, the helicopter took off and flew out over the city. We and the citizens of Rome were on the roofs of our houses. And Rome at that time was a sea of white handkerchiefs waving in farewell to the Pope. They understood what this man had done in giving up power, because it was a signal message to the political leaders of Italy at that time who were grasping for power. I believe that there was a genuine sadness amongst the people of Rome. Leave aside the theology or whatever. But here was this man, this elderly man, this old man, who had been their bishop and had given up power. And so they set him into the hands of God. After that funeral, I went for a wake, so to speak, at the residence of Cardinal Pell. And who was to know that within a week the same thing would occur? I remember that prophecy given about John for the rise and the fall of many. In the midst of the opinions which are floating and moving around at the present time, I think Cardinal Pell would be rather happy about the ferment of discussion which he'd left behind as his immediate legacy. Disagree, agree, or sit in the middle. He was a man that presented his opinions, and I believe well-formed opinions. But what will his contribution be, marked out as being to the Church in Australia, to the Universal Church? Who knows? What will be written really in the future? The reason why I was delayed in going to Pakistan, where I arrived on the 18th of January, was because of the requiem there and looking after 6 members of the Cardinal's family in Collegio San Colombano, to keep them away from the Palapazzi and to enable them to have reception rooms where they could receive guests who wanted to come and give condolences. On the 18th, I arrived in Pakistan, an intense 2 weeks of missal translation, translating the missal into Urdu. And as I've often said with glee to the Cardinal, Your Eminence, we don't use the Vox Para translation. We translate directly from the Latin into the Urdu because we just find that there are too many differences in the English translation that we have before us. Then to Australia, where I arrived in Brisbane on February 1 in preparation for a meeting on February 2 of the newly emerged and formed Australian chapter of the Papal Foundation, Centesimus Annus, which was an encyclical, Centesimus Annus. It was an encyclical written by Pope John Paul II to commemorate the 100th anniversary of his encyclical Rerum Novarum. And this foundation was set up by John Paul II to promote Catholic social teaching throughout the world. So we had that meeting there, and then fortunately I was able to be in Melbourne on February 3 for the Mass, the Requiem Mass for His Eminence. Diversity, travelling, but it's a matter of seizing the opportunities for the sake of the gospel. And I think, having said that, I shall finish. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes.
Or any provoking observations? Yes.
Thank you very much, Father. That was wonderful. It sounds like the young Catholics of Pakistan have more confidence than the Catholics in Australia. Is there a message there for the Catholics in Australia about how we can be confident or regain our confidence?
Well, what we've done with them, you are Catholics, don't deny it. That's the reality of it. I can because I'm Catholic. The energy that's behind that. They've emerged from a situation of being marginalised because of their faith. Now, it's a different situation that you've got here. Do the young people who are supposed to be Catholic know that they're Catholic? The difference in Pakistan, they know that they're Catholic, but they know because of being Catholic they're marginalised. So give the energy, they'll move up and beyond. But the thing about them, when they get into the universities, their best friends become Muslims. So they're not continuing ghettoisation in universities or in positions of employment. And because they've become high achievers academically and in behaviour, which we place a lot of emphasis on, they don't have a need to be in conflict. What it is for them, it's a great sense of pride for them to be Catholic. Now, how you deal with that here in Australia, that's for you, but I think perhaps the issue is, do the people who might be Catholic know that they're Catholic? You've got quite a different situation to what we have in Pakistan.
Looking at the church from Australia, you get the impression that the growth in the church is in Africa and India and Pakistan and these countries rather than in Europe and Australia and America. And the Pope's now in the Congo, so how do you feel about that? You know, we see some people come out here from those countries and they're very good priests and that sort of thing, so it's almost like we're a missionary country for them. So.
Well, they talk about the Filipinos as being the new Irish. I mean, whether you get 10 Filipinos, you've got an energetic parish going. Exactly. Look, there's a huge energy amongst them, but I think it's important that we go back and look at what our history, our church, the history of the Catholic Church is teaching us. There have been waves of decline and recovery. I mean, the whole purpose of why St. Columban set out from Ireland in 590 AD and evangelized in through Europe was that the face of the Catholic Church had really disappeared due to the barbarian invasions, if one's allowed to use that unwoke term, but you know what I mean by that. Waves of people coming in, structures that were supporting the church collapsed, political, urban structures collapsing, waves of people coming in, new challenges. If you move up to the time of St. Francis, essentially St. Francis's move was not just simply a move of gathering people around and looking at the sun and looking at the moon, but it was essentially a movement throughout Europe to revivify and resuscitate the life of the church. The reason why St. Alfonso Liguori founded the Redemptorists in the south of Italy was to overcome a total ignorance of what it was to be a Catholic. If one looks in France, 1901 to 1903, the Coombe Law, which oppressed the church, following on from the period after the 1848 revolutions. There was an ebb and fall in the life of the church. There are religious congregations now in Rome. I can give you an example of one, the Crozier Fathers. The Crozier Fathers in 1890 were reduced down to one member. Now they're a flourishing congregation of 1,500. I think, look at the sea sometimes. Go down to in front of St. Bede's and look at the sea. The tide goes out and it comes in. I hope this isn't being simplistic, but I think it's important to look at the rhythms of faith adherence over the spread of 2,000 years. And when the Son of Man comes, returns, will he find faith on the earth? I hope that's not simplistic, but we do realise that the energy has moved from Europe, from Africa, from Australia, to other parts of Asia, Vietnam 10% Catholic, to Africa, the third biggest percentage of population attending Mass on Sunday is the Congo. Philippines, whatever. Is it that the grace of God is being redistributed? How many priests and sisters have gone from Australia as missionaries? The seeds that were sown, now we're receiving the fruit of them. Korea, extraordinary. South Korea is 60% Christian. So, if I can put it within that context, it might help to extend the terms of the conversation.
Thank you very much, Father, again. We always come away learning a lot, but I think the most important thing to realise is we really are a very lucky country here, and we need to share our luck. And I think that's wonderful what you've done. So,
With your help.
with our help, with everybody's help, I'd like you to accept this, but there's two conditions. One is you have to come back, and the other is you have to tell me who you want that made out to.
Can I tell you to put another zero on there?
Well, you can.
Thank you.
We're very fortunate.